Thank you very much. I am very pleased to have this opportunity to present the review that was released yesterday. A lot of gratitude goes to the organizers here at Reichman University, to all among the Israeli authorities who made this report possible with a very deep level of engagement, strong cooperation for the help as well, engagement of the academic community, starting with the Aaron Institute here and very broadly across the academic community in Israel. My presentation is way too long for the 10 minutes, but actually I'm going to skip over many slides as a number of subjects were covered already in the remarks that the Secretary General gave in the presentation by Director of Science, Technology and Innovation, Shihan, and therefore still to repeat the point that the horrific attacks of the 7th of October 2023 have had deep ramifications for Israeli society and a deep impact on the economy, actually stronger than what this chart shows, which already shows that the impact was large, with more than 5% on GDP at the end of 2023. Followed by a recovery, but still, even with that recovery, with that resilience, the trajectory of economic activity remains below where it was headed to before the attacks and the war. And there was an even stronger recomposition in growth, with a sharp contraction of investment, especially residential construction, after the suspension of work permits for Palestinians, and a sharp increase in government consumption as a result of war-related expenditure. This, when I seem to say that indeed inflation is high in this environment of supply disruptions and especially labor shortages. The reading of inflation is complicated by the increase in the value-added taxation at the beginning of the year, but it is above the target range of the central bank as of now. So the forecast for GDP growth, inflation, and the fiscal balance are these ones that the Secretary General mentioned this morning. So I'm going to go directly towards monetary policy to mention that there is a case for keeping monetary policy tight as a way of making sure that in spite of these pressures, inflation goes back within the inflation target range. A very strong basis for that is that inflation expectations, especially the long ones, have remained anchored, but they are anchored towards the upper end of the target range. So this anchoring has to be confirmed with monetary policy, even if there are forces such as the recent appreciation of the exchange rate and the fiscal consolidation that will work in the direction of reducing inflationary forces. So this, I skip to go into fiscal policy with consideration of debt levels. And there are really two dimensions to this chart. The horizontal one, which is the debt level as a share of GDP. And there, in Israel, even if it's not low, it is really, in a range where there are many OECD countries that have much higher ratios of public debt to GDP. So on the horizontal axis, Israel is comparatively well positioned. But when looking at the vertical axis, which is the credit default swap premium, the best measure of sovereign risk, it appears that for its level of debt, Israel pays a higher credit default swap rate. And that's a reflection of all the sources, including the geopolitical environment, that are making investment in Israel, in Israeli debt, more risky than investment in other countries. that have similar levels of the debt level to GDP. And a consequence of that in terms of economic policy making is a need for greater prudence and having greater buffers of resilience. And from that perspective, the fact that Israel was at a situation of near fiscal balance when it was hit by the attacks of October 2023 and went into war was also what allowed to go into a large deficit without risks of debt crisis. So it is also a lesson for the rest of the world that it is important to be prepared for adverse events and to manage public finances in ways that can absorb adverse events. And so the consolidation of public finances is really appropriate in these circumstances to make sure that debt remains under control. Then how to conduct this consolidation? There is, there are really two options, the spending side, the revenue side. When excluding defense expenditure, civilian spending in Israel as a ratio to GDP is below where it is in many OECD countries. So while there is a case for having spending reviews, making sure that spending is efficient and well allocated, there is limited scope for quantitative adjustment on the spending side, and there are large spending needs. Some were mentioned this morning already, to close public infrastructure gaps, to make sure that basic public expenditure needs, including in the social area, are met. So there is a space in fiscal consolidation for using the revenue side of the government, as has been done in the 2025 budget and is foreseen for 2026. Yes. And so this is what can be achieved with fiscal measures in terms of stabilizing debt, is what is shown here in yellow by comparison with the solid line, which is what happens on the continuation of current policy settings. But the one that is striking here is the violet dashed line, which shows that if there is success in the coming decade in efforts to bring more labor market participation among groups that are currently underrepresented, such as Haredi men and Arab Israeli women, then if the participation in the labor market of these groups, the new generations, as they enter the labor market, gradually converge with that of the rest of the Israeli population, the effects on long-term growth are really important. They were discussed this morning, and the fiscal benefits are large as well. And this is what is illustrated here. So I am going to skip on this, which is what was discussed already, to flag that the cost of living is a very important subject that my colleague Eric Fromm is going to cover in a few minutes, and to end with a few words on the challenge of climate change. I'm aware that there are other immediate priorities right now, but climate change is there. The need globally for adjustment is there as well. On current policy settings, emissions are on a trajectory that is far from the 2030 and even further from the 2050 target. There has been a very important step and that will be my last chart, a very important step at the beginning of this year with the introduction of a carbon tax. That's the most efficient instrument, together with emission permits, to reduce emissions for the lowest economic cost. However, when we look at the rates as they are now, that's the red line, and from the carbon tax, so they apply to coal, solid fossil fuels, natural gas used in electricity generation, but they are very well below the 30 euros per ton of CO2 or 60 euros per ton of CO2 that are the usual benchmark for really bringing down emissions. So this will be something to look at, an area for using this carbon tax as a basis and increasing the rates, these rates, which are very important because, as you see, the fossil fuels used in electricity generation are a big chunk. That's the horizontal dimension of this chart of total emissions. And with this, I renew my thanks and wish all of you a very good continuation of the conference. Thank you.